Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. AMC stock is green now here on the day today, at least slightly, and slightly green. I'll take that over being red, because if you're red today, oh my gosh, that's a rough day. Okay, even red a little bit just doesn't cut it. Okay, people don't want to see red today. Not following Fed Jerome Powell's shift. And you know what's interesting? Everyone said the last Fed meeting, not the one that just happened, but the one before that, was this big shift from Powell, or maybe it was two ago, when Powell first started talking about cutting rates next. Whereas, I think this was really the shift with Powell. This was the meeting where I realized it really doesn't matter what happens with inflation. The Fed has essentially defeated inflation in their minds. Who knows if that's obviously true, but they have defeated inflation in their minds. And no matter what happens next, unless you were to see some kind of crazy spike in inflation that's like super unprecedented, you're going to get cuts next. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because the Fed is feeling a lot of pressure from especially the government, different senators that continuously write him, that bag on him to cut rates during Senate testimonies. I think he's starting to feel the pressure. I think all of the Fed officials are starting to feel the pressure. And as we get closer to the election, it looks like we're going to be getting quite a few rate cuts, no matter essentially what happens with this recent bout of inflation. Now, the Fed could maybe, cut less, but either way, the Fed is going to be cutting. Now, Powell made it clear to me, very clear, crystal freaking clear. If you actually watch the press conference, Powell is waiting for any reason he can find to start really cutting rates. He said, let me paraphrase here. He said that we're probably not going back to those really low COVID era interest rates for a long time. But he said there's a lot of uncertainty around that. Like, on one hand, the Fed's saying in their dot plot, GDP is going to be amazing. Well, at least trend. We're not going to be in a low growth environment for years. But Powell's also saying anything can happen. Maybe we do unexpectedly fall into a recession and the Fed drops down to ultra low interest rates again. I think the Fed made it clear to me they're just waiting for a reason to start really cutting rates. And who knows exactly what that is going to be, what catalyst that will be, if that's a non-farm payroll report, if that's a weekly insurance registration number that comes in high. I don't exactly know, but anything at this point could cause Powell to start really, really cutting rates. Now, let's go over some of the data that we had today, give you an overview of what we're going to be looking at for tomorrow, and all of the specific data and information you need to know with AMC stock. So, first up, the data today, initial jobless claims came in at 210,000, lower than the 215,000 estimate. Powell's still not getting a reason to cut there. Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index came in at 3.2. The consensus, the estimate, was negative 2.3, so that was much better than expected. Philly Fed business conditions came in way higher than last month at 38.6. Last month was 7.2. We did not have an estimate. Philly Fed CapEx came in at 23.60. Last month was 12.70. So people are spending more money while businesses are spending more money. Philly Fed employment came in at negative 9.6, a little bit better than last month's number of negative 10.3. Philly Fed new orders came in at positive 5.4. And last month was negative 5.2. Get this, though. Part of the reason why I think the markets are probably doing exceptionally well today, Philly Fed prices paid came in at 3.70. Last month was 16.60. Huh? Say what? That's insane. Now these also helped. S&P Global Composite PMI Flash came in at 52.2. The estimate was 51.5, so a little bit better on the headline number there. S&P Global Manufacturing PMI came in at 52.5, better than the headline estimate of 52. And S&P Global Services PMI came in at 51.7. The estimate was 52.2. So prices paid fell for the Philly Fed. and S&P Global Services PMI also fell more than expected. That's fantastic news. Existing home sales came in higher than estimates at 4.38 million. Great news. And existing home sales month over month came in at positive 9.5%. I mean, I don't know if that's fantastic news for the Fed, but I mean, we haven't seen a lot of action in real estate lately. Rent prices are still high. If we start to get more activity here, maybe that ends up being a positive thing for housing inflation. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Fed Barr spoke at noon. He's typically the guy that does like banking policies. He's the regulator of the banking division of the Fed. So he doesn't talk much about Fed policy, so we really didn't get any quotes there. Tonight, you will be getting the inflation rate out of Japan. Could be important, something to watch, but typically not a big deal. Now, I think the big story here in after hours is going to be the earnings from Nike, Lululemon, and FedEx. Now, these guys are consumer kind of staple companies, right? Not stable and stable in terms of like you have to, buy things through these companies, but they're companies that are really great bellwethers for the consumer. FedEx, Lulu, and Nike, consumer-oriented names. If they have bad earnings, that's going to be a big problem for potentially just how strong the consumer is doing. And I'm sure that's something the Fed will be looking at, specifically with FedEx. If FedEx says consumers slowing down, people are not buying as many things, we're just not seeing as much business, that's not going to be that's not going to be fantastic. Okay, that's not going to be a great thing. So definitely these earnings today and after hours are ones to be watching a little bit more closely, especially Lululemon, because they're really a higher dollar amount product in and of itself. So you want to see how the consumer is doing, look at Lulu. Now a lot of females, they're going to spend on Lulu. So I'm really not too worried about their earnings at all. Nike, they've been in a little bit more of a problematic situation. So I would say expectations are low for Nike, high for Lulu, and pretty low for FedEx. So if FedEx doesn't beat those low expectations, yeah, definitely going to have a bit of a problem there. Now, as far as tomorrow's economic calendar, we do have retail sales coming out month over month from the UK at about 3 o'clock in the morning tonight, technically tomorrow morning, but that could move things. Not really expecting it to. And then you have Fed Bar again at noon tomorrow, and then you do have Fed Bostic at 4 p.m. Now, is he going to say anything Friday at 4 p.m. that'll move the markets? Probably not, but it's possible and definitely something to be considering. Now, here on the day today, we don't have any company-specific news with AMC that I can find, but AMC is kind of very volatile, back and forth. You do have the Reddit IPO that, it's getting a lot of attention. Not my kind of company anyways, right, to invest in. Definitely not for the long term, but some people are looking at trading this. And that could make sense to why AMC stock is also down. And I talked about this in the last video. If, people are selling their AMC stock to, buy Reddit, sure, okay, that makes a little bit of sense to why AMC would be slightly down on the day. And now you're down about, oh my gosh, about a 0.5%. Yeah, that's what happens when AMC is red. Gets you tired, gets you yawning when there's nothing going on. AMC stock really hasn't been doing much of anything for a while now. Now, on a day like today, really to be red or even slightly green, but just like kind of red, that's just insane, right? Because, I mean, look at the markets. Look at the markets. The Russell is up 1.3%. The NASDAQ up 0.62%. S&P up 0.54%. And the Dow is up 0.82%. Wow. I mean, you're going to be red on a day like today. kind of insane. Bond yields, treasury yields are actually rising about 1 basis point for your 10-year treasury, which, just again, that was from the dot plot. The Fed really just raised the estimates for the Fed funds rate by the end of 2025 and 2026. So that makes sense. Longer term interest rates are going to be higher. And if you look at the longer run category here of the dot plot, it went from 2.5 to 2.6%, which is definitely not great. So your longer run neutral rate, as the Fed thinks, is higher now, and not exactly good, but it's not enough to keep the markets down, to keep the bulls away. There's so much momentum in our markets. With the Fed, your friend again, I don't know what pushes this market down, to be honest. You're going to have to see some weakening in the economy or something to really materially get this market down. Could you go through little correction events, 3% pullbacks? Sure, but are you going to get a 10+% pullback? Probably not. Okay, now let's take a look at the data here for AMC. We do have 14.01% short interest of free float, which is continuing to rise, really just every single day. It seems like continuing to rise. $156.14 million worth of short positions currently in AMC stock. Days to cover 2.5, 36.74 million shares. Gosh, these kids might be wearing me out too. 36.74 million shares that are currently sold short. 52 million shares currently out on loan. Cost to borrow 1.08%. Utilization of 69.64%. And a short score of 69.34 out of 100. You do have cost to borrow fees at about 8.18% as well. So data, albeit it's not moving around all too much, it is moving in the right direction. It's moving in the direction that you guys want to see: higher short interest and a more squeezy overall setup that we're working towards with AMC, so keep that in mind. Now, if we take a look at the option activity today, volume today to the call side, 64.45%. Volume today to the put side of 35.55%. So basically a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times as many calls being bought today compared to puts. And that's exactly where you want to be. You could want to be more bullish than that, but I mean, 2 times as many calls than puts definitely shows the bulls are still out there. I just don't understand why AMC stock is down. Again, the Reddit IPO probably has a lot to do with it. You do have cost to borrow fees at like 8%. Okay, so that's also working against AMC stock. So keep that in mind. Sentiment is neutral today at 50. Yesterday, it was extremely bullish at 76. Message volume today is 60. Yesterday was at 52. And the participation ratio today is at 55. So definitely seeing some pretty good numbers here. Sentiment obviously is a little bit lower today because AMC stock is red and the broader markets are doing very well. If you take a look at the percent of stocks above their 50-day moving average, you do have, let's see if it will upload or update. Let's see. 61.15% of stocks above their 50-day moving average. 2.75% of stocks are now breaking above their 50-day moving average today. Pretty good number, about 5% of a jump today. Pretty good, definitely taking a step in the right direction, but I do think with this pivot from Powell that we got yesterday, you're probably going to see a lot more upside from here. I mean, again, it looks clear. We're going to get cuts no matter what. The Fed is really not worried about this recent round of inflation. The economy's doing well. I mean, in the worst case scenario, if the economy does start to turn down, the Fed's going to cut rates very quickly, right? Very, very quickly, and come in and support the markets in any which way the markets need. So, I just really don't see the catalyst for markets to fall from here. Obviously, those are like famous last words because, we could have a catalyst come out tomorrow. We could have bad news come out right now. Who knows? But as far as right now, I just don't see it. I don't see anything unless earnings were to really come in bad or something, which doesn't look likely as kind of an aggregate. Then you're probably not going to be falling from here. Now, what does that mean for AMC? Well, the liquidity situation, liquidity crunch, that's never going to happen anymore. That's not even an option. If the Fed is really supporting the markets and doing whatever they need to support the markets, you're just not going to get a liquidity crunch. Liquidity will stay abundant and stocks will stay higher. Now, I think that's also a good thing for AMC when the markets deem you should buy interest rate sensitive stocks. Now, if you look at SoFi, you look at Fubo, you look at Tesla, you look at some other interest rate sensitive names, a lot of those stocks are still not doing that well today. So it's not like we're getting some kind of huge, crazy, broad-based, exciting rally with your interest rate sensitive names. That's not exactly the case. Not everything is doing well today, but most things are. AMC stock is now down almost 1%. Markets are slipping a little bit here as we are recording this video, kind of slipping downwards, but really, I mean, you've got a gap up, and you're probably going to hold that gap up throughout the rest of the day today. If we don't, then you have a larger problem on your hands, but we'll see. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. Again, if you're a bull, you want to get above that 50-day moving average currently at $4.37 per share, or 37 cents per share. If you're a bear, you don't want to see that happen. And if you really start to get under like $4.20 per share, then that's where you're looking at even larger downside, potentially down to new all-time lows. And it just depends on, again, if that happens, what Adam Aron does, if we have a catalyst, if we get a commitment not to dilute shareholders, or just what happens in that regard. So let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Again, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.